Amstetten, Austria, a picturesque town 130 kilometers west of Vienna. Quiet streets, friendly neighbors, and a 3-story apartment block that hid a nightmare for nearly a quarter of a century. Behind those walls, a girl named Elisabeth Fritzl spent 8,016 days in hell. She was 18 years old when she vanished. She was 42 when she finally saw the sun again. Locked in a windowless dungeon by the one person who was supposed to protect her, her own father, she endured repeated sexual assault, gave birth to 7 children in captivity, and raised 3 of them in complete darkness. This is the story of how Elisabeth Fritzl survived the unimaginable, how she finally escaped, and the disturbing question that still haunts Austria. How did no one notice for 24 years? To understand the horror, we have to understand the man who built it. Josef Fritzl was born in 1935. His father was an alcoholic who abandoned the family and later died fighting for the Nazi. His mother, by all accounts, was strict and abusive. Fritzl later claimed she beat him so badly he would lie in pools of blood. On the surface, Josef rebuilt himself. He became an electrical engineer, married a 17-year-old girl named Rosemary in 1956, and had 7 children, including Elisabeth, born in 1966. To the neighbors, he was strict, perhaps a little cold, but successful. He rented out apartments. He had a pool on the roof. He seemed normal. But beneath the mask was a predator. In 1967, Fritzl broke into the home of a 24-year-old nurse, held a knife to her throat, and raped her. He served just 12 months of an 18-month sentence. And under Austrian law at the time, after 15 years, his criminal record was wiped clean, as if it never happened. That expunged record would prove critical, because years later, when Fritzl applied to foster children, the authorities saw a respectable engineer, not a convicted rapist. By 1977, when Elisabeth was just 11 years old, her father's abuse had already begun. At 15, she tried to escape. She ran away to Vienna with a friend, but police found her and brought her home, back to her father. Then came August 28th, 1984. Elisabeth was 18. Her father asked her to help him carry a heavy door down to the cellar. It seemed innocent enough. But when she entered, he attacked her. He held an ether-soaked cloth over her face until she lost consciousness. When she woke up, she was in a tiny, windowless room, handcuffed, screaming, but no one could hear her. The cellar was soundproof. The door was made of concrete and steel, weighing over 500 pounds, and could only be opened by a remote control with a numeric code that only Josef Fritzl knew. The next day, her mother reported her missing. A month later, a letter arrived, supposedly from Elisabeth. It said she was tired of her family, that she had run away to join a cult, and that they should not look for her. The police accepted it. The case was closed. But here's the truth they didn't know. Josef Fritzl had forced Elisabeth to write that letter at gunpoint. He then mailed it to himself and showed it to police as proof. It was the first of many forged letters he would use to maintain the lie. The cellar was 60 square meters, roughly 650 square feet. It had no windows, no natural light. The ceiling was so low that in some places, an adult couldn't stand up straight. There was a small kitchen, a bathroom, and 3 tiny sleeping cells. For the first 5 years, Elisabeth was completely alone. Her only human contact was her rapist, visiting every 2 to 3 days to bring food and supplies, and to assault her. He told her that if she tried to escape, the cellar would be flooded with poison gas or electrified. It was a lie, but she had no way of knowing that. Then, the children started coming. Between 1988 and 2002, Elisabeth gave birth to 7 of her father's children, alone, without medical assistance. On the cold floor of that dungeon, 3 of them, Kirsten, Stefan, and Felix, remained imprisoned with her, never seeing sunlight, never breathing fresh air, never knowing a world without concrete walls. 3 others, Lisa, Monica, and Alexander, were taken upstairs to be raised by Josef and his unsuspecting wife, Rosemarie. Fritzl staged their arrivals as foundlings left on the doorstep, with notes from Elisabeth begging her parents to care for them. The social workers believed him. They even praised him for taking in these abandoned babies. And then there was Michael, a twin born in 1996. He died just 3 days after birth. Deprived of medical care, he never had a chance. Fritzl took the tiny body and burned it in the house furnace. Here's the part that still shocks investigators. Josef Fritzl was not a criminal mastermind. He was sloppy, and the authorities missed chance after chance to save Elisabeth. The chimney sweep visited the cellar twice a year. He saw the furnace, the pipes, but never noticed the hidden door. Lodgers living upstairs saw Fritzl carrying groceries, furniture, even building materials into the cellar, things that never came back out. They thought it was strange, but they never asked. In Austria, you don't question the landlord. When the second baby, Monica, was abandoned on the doorstep in 1994, something happened that should have raised alarms. Rosemarie heard the baby crying, brought her inside, and then the phone rang. It was a recorded message from Elisabeth, apologizing. But here's the thing. The Fritzls had just changed their phone number. It wasn't listed anywhere. How could Elisabeth possibly have known the new number? The social worker noted this in a report, and then did nothing. The pattern continued for 24 years. Clues were ignored, suspicions were never voiced, and Elisabeth remained trapped. On April 19, 2008, the nightmare finally began to crack. Elisabeth's eldest daughter, 19-year-old Kirsten, fell critically ill in the cellar. She was convulsing, suffering kidney failure. She needed a hospital or she would die. For the first time in 24 years, Fritzl had no choice. He let Kirsten go. At the hospital, doctors were baffled. The girl was malnourished, pale as a ghost, and her medical history was a complete mystery. The man who brought her in, Grandpa Joseph, gave vague answers. The doctors called police, and then they did something that changed everything. They went on television and appealed to Kirsten's missing mother to come forward. Down in the cellar, Elisabeth watched that broadcast on the small TV Fritzl had given them. She saw her daughter's face. She saw her chance. She confronted Fritzl. She told him that if Kirsten died because he wouldn't let her go to the hospital, she would tell everything. For the first time in 24 years, Elisabeth held power over her captor. On April 26, 2008, Fritzl unlocked the door. Elisabeth walked out of the cellar, holding her son Felix's hand with Stefan behind her. She hadn't seen the sky since she was 18 years old. She was now 42. At the hospital, Elisabeth was reunited with Kirsten. Police were waiting. At first, she was too terrified to speak. She made them promise she would never, ever have to see her father again. Only then did she begin to talk. For 2 hours, she told them everything. That same day, police arrested Josef Fritzl. They searched the house and found the hidden dungeon. Behind that 500-pound concrete door, they discovered the cramped, windowless world where 3 human beings had spent their entire lives. In March 2009, Josef Fritzl stood trial. He initially tried to deny the worst charges, but when he heard that Elisabeth herself would testify, he changed his plea. He confessed to everything, including the negligent homicide of baby Michael. The court heard how Fritzl had planned the dungeon years in advance. They heard how he had previously locked his own mother in the attic until she died. They heard the forensic psychiatrist's diagnosis: a severe personality disorder with borderline, schizotypal, and schizoid traits. A monster, but a legally sane one. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. In 2024, now in his late 80s and suffering from dementia, he was moved from a psychiatric prison to a regular facility, a step that could eventually lead to release, though his attorneys say he is unlikely to ever be freed. And Elisabeth? She and her 6 surviving children were given new identities and moved to a secret village in rural Austria, known only to the public as Village X. They live with Elisabeth's partner, Thomas, a bodyguard originally hired to protect the family. The transition was not easy. The 3 children raised upstairs felt guilt for living normal lives while their siblings suffered below. The 3 raised in the cellar had to learn everything: sunlight, space, the taste of fresh food, how to be part of the world. But slowly, they adapted. Today, Kirsten is in a serious relationship. Stefan dreamed of becoming a merchant ship captain. Felix, the youngest, loved playing video games and attending school. A local once said, "Given what they have been through, they are very polite, happy, and smile a lot." Elisabeth has stopped regular psychiatric therapy. She learned to drive. She helps her children with homework. She makes friends in her village. As one member of her care team put it, she lost the best years of her life in that cellar. She is determined that every day remaining to her will be filled with activity. The Fritzl case is a story of unimaginable cruelty, but also, against all odds, a story of survival. Elisabeth Fritzl endured 8,316 days in hell, and she came out the other side determined to live. The question remains, how did a convicted rapist fool an entire system for 24 years? And how many other Elisabeths are still out there, waiting for someone to ask the right questions? If you or someone you know needs help, resources are available. Links are in the description. Thanks for watching Evidence Locker. If you want to dive deeper into cases where justice was delayed but not denied, click the video on screen now. We'll see you next time.